How's it going, Anurag? It's great to get you on the podcast. You know, we've had this thing on the books or in the making here for a little bit, and I'm real excited for our conversation today. I think it's going to be really interesting.
As am I, Joe. Thanks for having me on the podcast. And I know we've been trying to do this for a while. Glad to finally be able to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, why don't we start with your background, right? How did you get into IT? What did you see about the industry or the area, right, that interested you enough in it to get you into this area and now you're, on the security side. What was that journey like?
Yeah. So, without dating myself, I've been around, dealing with technology way before the internet. And but the fortunate thing for me was I had the distinct privilege of being associated with some great technology organizations, everything from Apple to Sprint to British Telecom, and then along the way was associated with a couple of really successful startups, all of which dwelled on technology. A lot of them dwelled into communications, inherently focused into mobile and wireless, and more importantly, on security. And then along the way, I had again the honor to be part of the United States National Broadband Task Force, which was President Obama's way of making sure that we as a country had a broadband plan that we could leverage across industries and across technologies as a means to move our country's agenda forward, both economically and socially. So that was an absolutely amazing experience. Most recently, here in my current position, we are in the business of delivering really compelling messaging platforms to customers across the globe. We have mobile operators as our customers as well. They leverage our platform to enable services for their own subscribers. But today we'll be spending most of our time talking about our enterprise business, which kind of leveraged the heritage we brought to the table from the carrier business and allowed us to build up platforms purpose built for the enterprise so that the enterprise could securely and with control leverage the strength and the capability that mobile messaging brings to bear. And so that's essentially what we are currently doing. And I'm really excited about not only where we are headed, but really the opportunity that lies ahead of us. What is the problem that you're trying to solve? And I think that's a great way of getting into the depth and breadth of this challenge that we all face. Going back, to about, I think, 92, 93, 94, short message services or short message system that we refer to as SMS today, they started proliferating across mobile phones. As mobile phones proliferated, SMS started to become really important and popular. And then fast forward to the advent of the iPhone in 2007, all of a sudden we had these smart devices on our fingertips, and people found sending mobile messages as a very efficient means to communicate. Come Gen Zs and Gen Xers, they brought all of that into the enterprise. And as mobile messaging encroached into the enterprise, not because people preferred to use it, which they did, but also it gave them the means to be more productive and allowed them to be brief in their communication, but get the same job done. We've seen data that a mobile message essentially gets opened within 15 minutes of it being received on the receiving end, right? Email takes much longer. Email is much more detailed and sometimes can get lost in the whole realm of spam and other means and don't get the same response that a quick mobile message would get. Now, all of that was great till we saw that there wasn't really a platform that had been purpose built for the enterprise. It's great to use mobile messaging within the enterprise as long as you're not sharing anything that is intellectually important to you or is proprietary to the organization. And in most cases, when you are communicating for a company or in behalf of a company, all of those do apply. And then when you put that out in the consumer realm, you also put that out in the open because none of the consumer brands or platforms were ever built to be enterprise ready. And by enterprise ready, I mean they were never built to be secure. They never promised security. They were never built to be controlled by the IT organization. Never promised that. They were never built to be, help you stay in regulatory compliance of your obligations. They never said that. And so we felt that there was an opportunity for us to go out and build a platform for that particular purpose. And that's how NetSphere came about. So it is actually built on those four pillars that I mentioned: security, control, regulatory compliance, and then finally a range of productivity features that are built within the platform to provide a level of convenience to the end user.
So it's like an app, like Signal or something like that, that provides enhanced security for, messaging and probably a whole host of interactions that you can have within modern technology now.
Yes, I think you can compare it to Signal. We refer to it more as a platform than an app because it has a lot more than even Signal offers. In fact, if the US government was using our platform when they ended up using Signal and had war plans getting posted when they shouldn't have been posted, that wouldn't have happened if they would have leveraged our platform. So that also describes the problem really well. People like mobile messaging. They go out and start using their own platforms without being fully aware whether they address some of the other challenges they need to be aware of, and then they get themselves in trouble. But should they use NetSphere, all of that does not happen, and they get the benefit of all of that without putting themselves and their organization at risk.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've done some work with the government earlier on in my career, and it's always interesting because it's like, 95% of the government is on technology that is just so antiquated, and not saying that Signal's antiquated or anything like that, right? Like I use Signal every day, but just a simple text message. If I were to like text one of the employees there, like they wouldn't receive it, or if they did receive it, they wouldn't be responding to it. It would be like a very long process for any of that to take place, which is it's frustrating, right? Because you always think, at least from like the technology side of it, that hey, like the government is probably on like the top of the line stuff, right? And then we have like Elon Musk and Doge going, and they're saying like, hey, this entire payment system is built on 70s technology that someone literally has to put a punch card into a machine. Like I'm probably
Yeah.
exaggerating a little bit, but it doesn't surprise me at all, right? Because I've been saying it to other people, the whole time, and people like just think he doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm sitting here like, no, I've seen these ancient mainframes. I've talked to the guys that these companies are still existing based on this contract, right? And
Yep.
like it's crazy.
No, and I totally agree with you. In my opening remarks, mentioned that I had the distinct honor of working for the government. I was the Broadband Task Force was actually part of the Federal Communications Commission. And so I had a first-hand opportunity to look at the way the government operates and the government systems and the government technologies. And, don't get me wrong, the government is full of very, very smart and motivated people, but the job of overwhelming of kind of overhauling the platforms that have been deployed within the government infrastructure is so large, especially trying to keep pace with the innovation which is accelerating exponentially. And now with AI, that innovation is going to be driven even faster. So just trying to keep up is the challenge. It's not that the intention is not there and the monies don't exist, but 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 the intention is there. It's just the challenge is so large, and that what creates the actual problem that I was referring to. And you kind of referred to it as well. Is when people are within an environment and they want to use certain technologies that they are not necessarily getting from their own IT organization, they will go out and take the least path of resistance and find their own solutions. And that's true even in the private sector. I've spoken to so many IT managers, and for them to try to keep pace with what their end users want becomes a big challenge. And though they do their best to deliver in all time. So mobile messaging was one such problem, and it kind of encroached into the realm. And when it encroaches into your realm, it has the means to compromise security of your environment. And that has become that much more prevalent now that we are in a post-COVID world where we saw cyber attacks increase exponentially. And in most cases, these attacks would originate in some kind of phishing mechanism. And that phishing came to you through email or through SMS or some other means to get to you, right? And so we as end users became the weakest link. So that's why we came up with NetSphere. We believed that people would want to continue to use mobile messaging, but till they didn't have a platform that was enterprise ready, they would put their entire environment to risk. And so once NetSphere is deployed, it's the best of all worlds. And in essence, they get the solution they're looking for. They are productive, while at the same point of time, we help the enterprise to stay secure.
Hmm. So it's, from what you're describing to me, it kind of sounds like it's an extrapolation of Apple's user space tiered architecture, right? Where everything is kind of sandboxed off, and what you're interacting with on your phone actually isn't able to interact with the layer down, which is, probably like things like the phone dialer, right? Or, the drivers that are installed, the OS and stuff like that. So it sounds like it's like a secured sandbox environment within, the potential sandbox environment, because I believe Android also, says that their user space is sandboxed off now, but I don't know how true that is. So it sounds like it's its own user space. So how does that interact with a potential like MZ catcher, right? That you would encounter. I mean, allegedly they're all gone, but China used to have MZ catchers in their airport terminals, right? As soon as you get off the plane, your phone connects to this MZ catcher, downloads all of your data. It has everything. It doesn't even like technically, break your phone's security. How does it interact with a situation like that? Have you looked at something like that?
Absolutely. And that was one of the things that we wanted to make sure that at any given time, and I think the sandbox is a great way of describing it. Any given time when you're within the NetSphere sandbox, your data is kept secure. So if there is an MZ catcher, and it's secure because one of our strongest pillars that we've kind of built this platform on was encryption and true end-to-end encryption. And I'll describe that. The reason I said true, but to answer your question directly, in the context of MZ catcher, we aren't immune to the MZ catcher, but if they were to extract NetSphere data as it was going back and forth or pulling it off of the device, they would get a bunch of gibberish, and there's nothing they could do with that. So that was what we were trying to accomplish. It's difficult to sometimes be immune to the communication layer that is being compromised, right? But if the layer is carrying information that is gibberish to you, there's nothing you can do about it. And that's why not only are we end-to-end encrypted, we are now quantum proof. And in the same context of China, if you may, or other nations who are now leveraging cyber essentially has been weaponized, right? And with it being weaponized, in the old days, it was some mafia entities or some rogue folks who were trying to leverage cyber as a means to enrich themselves. Now we see that states have weaponized cyber as a means to engage in warfare. And what are they after? Is data. Any and every kind of data. We believe data is the next most valuable commodity, more valuable than even gold, if you may, because of the nature of the information it carries. So when we developed our platform, we wanted to make sure it was end-to-end encrypted. And what I mean by true end-to-end encrypted is most people who claim to have, or most platforms who claim to have end-to-end encryption, they decrypt the information along the way for various reasons. For addressing reasons, for information storage reasons, for if they're inspecting the data, for their own marketing reasons. Means we know of a very large company that has a messaging app called WhatsApp, right? And sometimes you wonder how they figure out what you're looking for when you had just mentioned it on an encrypted conversation, quote
Yeah,
unquote encrypted
allegedly encrypted.
on WhatsApp, right? So we wanted to make sure there was true end-to-end encryption. So at nowhere along the path, as our data goes from the originating side to the terminating side or the receiving side, is that data decrypted. It's only decrypted by the user or the receiver. the legitimate user and the receiver. And we have multiple means of making sure that that happens. And then we said, okay, we want to make sure that we aren't susceptible, or at least essentially, we are not susceptible to quantum threats, even though quantum computing is some ways off. Now, we don't know that for sure because we have all these state actors also investing billions in making sure they are the first ones with a platform such as that. We also have the private sector doing the same. If quantum could potentially be a threat, you started seeing harvest now, decrypt later attacks, where data was being harvested and is being kept. So even though it was encrypted, to be decrypted later. So we wanted to make sure our platform did not fall into that kind of a trap. And so that's why we upgraded our platform to quantum encryption. And today we proudly state that we are quantum proof. And it's an assurance to our customers who come from finance, healthcare, first responders, government, other entities, technology companies. It's an assurance to them that whatever they're communicating, leveraging our platform for today will remain safe even in a quantum world.
Yeah, it's fascinating. You brought up, right, how even like your modern, message, right? Let's say I'm messaging someone from my iPhone and they have an iPhone, right? And I'm getting the blue text box that everyone loves so much, right? And it's because Apple, markets it as, hey, that's fully encrypted and everything else like that, right? Like it's completely secure and it's going directly from phone to phone, there's nothing to worry about or whatnot. When in all actuality, it has to be decrypted at some point in time. And the reason why it has to be decrypted at some point in time is because the federal government can come in and go and subpoena Verizon to say, hey, I need all the messages off that phone, everything that was sent through your network from this device to whatever other device, right? And because we need to, track this person, they're a terrorist or whatever it might be, right? Whatever the situation is. Not only do they have to give up that data, but it has to be in a readable format, and even if it's not in a readable format, the government, 9.5 times out of 10, they're breaking whatever was on there so that they could get in and see it, which, I feel like a lot of people don't realize that or don't understand it, right? It's like it's it's secured to a point, right? It's secured against an adversary that doesn't have unlimited funds, that doesn't have unlimited manpower and time, right? It's secured against someone like myself, right? Like what are the odds that I'm actually even going to spend the time to try and, break that sort of encryption or whatnot, right? And if I could, I probably wouldn't be doing this podcast. I'd be giving talks around the world or something like that, right? But it's fascinating. I'm interested in the post quantum side of it, right? And so I'll give you a little background. I'm sure my listeners are probably tired of hearing me talk about it at this point, right? But I'm getting my PhD in utilizing the zero trust framework to secure communication satellite infrastructure to prepare it for post quantum, right? So that entails, taking the requirements of post quantum encryption. What does that look like? Okay, can we put that onto a satellite? Yes, we can. That we have, the right resources and hardware and whatnot. Well, can we secure that hardware with zero trust, right? Zero trust being a framework that everyone knows. It's been around for a while. It's very widely deployed and used. It's a good framework overall. Can we take something that we know and kind of use it to protect ourselves from the future, right? Because we're kind of going into our uncharted territory right now with the advent of AI, with quantum encryption, with quantum computers, right? All of these things are kind of combining or colliding together in a way that once they reach a certain point that maybe only 5 people on the planet actually know what that point is. Once they reach that point, it's completely unstoppable, right? And it's like you're either going to be prepared for post quantum or you're not. And if you're not, you're going to be obsolete, right? Because all of your data is already going to be out there. You'd have to start from literal zero just to be able to say my data, my service is secure, right? And so we're starting to see companies actually put like post quantum cryptography and whatnot on their own roadmaps and saying like, hey, we need to amplify our spend, amplify the resources that we have around this, because if this quantum AI actually turns into a real thing, Chase Bank, if they don't have post quantum encryption already deployed on their devices, securing your data and whatnot, there's nothing holding back an AI that's powered by a nation state actor from using it in a malicious way. There's literally nothing you can do.
And you're absolutely right there. But before I comment on what you had to say with regards to quantum, I do want to talk about the backdoor per se that you mentioned in the realm of governments having access to some of the messages going back and forth. I'm privy to how that process works because, as I mentioned to you at the start, we also provide our platforms to mobile operators who then use that to enable their own subscriber base with feature functionality. So I know exactly how that process works. But I did want to acknowledge Apple for a second. Apple does take a very, very responsible position when it comes to encryption and security and your data. And if I was to single out one organization, I would single Apple out for that very purpose. They've actually even pushed back to a lot, even against the United States government, when called upon to share information that may not necessarily belong to them. So that's a very important point that I did want to make. Again, I'm not taking sides. I'm just pointing out the obvious, which is also recognized and acknowledged by a lot of other people within the industry. Now, continuing on to your comment about quantum, I could not agree with you more with regards to the quantum threat and how real it is. In fact, the Biden administration, on their last day of the last week, they set out an executive order that stated that everybody needs to accelerate and ensure that they are deploying a level of quantum encryption prior to, I think, 2032 or 2035, which, if you really look at it, is not that long ago. I mean, not that far away. And everybody's referring to this as Q Day. Q Day is essentially is the day when quantum computers become available, whether with a good party or a bad party, and have the means to start using quantum computing as a means to decrypt your information, right? I compare Q Day to Y2K with a couple of differences, right? Y2K, we knew exactly when that was going to happen. It was going to happen midnight of December 31st, 1999. And we also knew, for the most part, what we had to do to our systems to make sure that the clocks actually continued on past that midnight gong, if you may, right? But in the context of Q Day, we have no idea about one, when it's going to happen, and two, what the impact potentially could be. What we do know is what we need to do to ensure that we are protecting our environments. And that's why deploying systems and platforms that are quantum proof are so important today, because nobody has any idea when Q Day is going to happen. Technology tends to surprise, and I won't be surprised that there would be some state actor that has a lab out there where they're pumping, billions, if not trillions of dollars to be the first one out with a quantum platform. And then you introduce even a bigger problem or a bigger challenge where you talk about quantum AI, which really could go into the scary realm. Again, if you're not doing anything about it, because as we know, innovation in the AI field is really moving at an amazing pace. And a lot of that is really entirely dependent on the GPU power that you're able to deploy in your environment to push forth your LLMs, etc. Right? Now, can you imagine a computing environment that makes your GPUs as we know them today irrelevant because they are essentially so powerful? What would that do to the application layer, which is essentially running your LLMs? Right now, how does that evolve, and what could that potentially be? What impact could that potentially have to you? And so that's a next step outcome of quantum computing. But I always tell people, focus on the here and now, and the here and now really is make sure you're not buying into any platform that is not quantum proof and is not quantum ready. And then do a complete review of your internal systems. And, even in the context of the government, even if you have legacy systems, there are means to ensure that they are also made quantum proof, right? So make sure once you do an audit of your systems internally and at the periphery, make sure that you are deploying a quantum based strategy. Again, if it's mobile messaging you're concerned about, come talk to us. NetSphere is there today. It's available now. It's being deployed extensively across the globe, and we offer the service globally. So come talk to us, and we'd be happy to talk to you and set you up with a quantum safe communication platform, if you may.
Hmm. Yeah, to circle back to your comment with Apple, I'm actually a huge Apple fan. I really, unfortunately, like I try to, be like, agnostic or whatever the term is, right, towards technology, try to really like view it with an open mind. But I always go back to like when I was getting my master's, and in one of the classes, is mobile security, where you learn about the security of Android and iPhone, right? And then the lab is you're going to pick a vulnerability, you're going to deploy it, see how far you get on the device, right? I tried for probably 36 hours to get into an iPhone, and I couldn't,
Yeah.
via a Bluetooth vulnerability. It just would not work no matter what I did. And then I go and I switch to an Android, right? And I'm in with root within 30 minutes, right? I'm a terrible hacker. Like I'm real bad. Like it's I can fire up Kali Linux, but man, if it's beyond that, we're in a world of hurt over here, right? Android was no problem at all. And it just showed me right there, like, oh, they both parties claim that they care about security, but obviously one actually does.
Mhm.
And then you see the things where, Apple has completely gone against what the US government wanted, what the European government wanted, right? With getting backdoors into their devices and encryption and everything. And one is it's really eye opening to see a government actively say we want a backdoor into your devices, into your software. Makes me think also that they probably already have one in Android, right? If they're not asking Google or Android for for the same thing over there, right? Like if it was a problem for the government on that platform, they would have said it right when they said it with Apple. And so for Apple to push back the way that they did, and they're just like, hey, you can find me whatever you want. We can go to court. Doesn't matter. I have a whole bank vault full of cash ready to go just for this. Like, doesn't matter. You're not getting your back door. It makes me believe, that it's a lot more secure by default than any other device platform out there. I'm not trying to like put it up against NetSphere or anything like that, but I'm totally on board with your comments with Apple. It's like, we're also going into uncharted territory, right? Like we've never seen this convergence of AI and quantum. Both things, both areas have been around, since like the 80s or the 70s, right? Like I had on someone from NVIDIA talking about, you could argue, AI in its most crudest terms and form was around in the 50s even. And which is interesting to hear him, describe that, right? But we've never really been in a situation with both industries where they're at such a inflection point, right? Where it's like, if wait a minute, this AI over here is doing all these different things, right? And AI is different from an LLM, but I think LLMs kind of shed light on the capabilities and the potential of AI, right? Like they're so very closely linked that really only, nerds like myself and you would actually be able to say, well, an LLM isn't quite an AI, right? Based on whatever, right? But for most people, for 95% of the people, if I go ask my wife, she's going to say, hey, ChatGPT is an AI, right? Like that's what it is. Um, so it's getting more visibility, more attention than ever. And we're also at this inflection point where the technology for quantum and AI are like catching up to what everyone has been saying for decades. That's what everyone's been warning about. And now we're in a situation where literally, like I'm hoping my iPhone, they're preparing something in the background, right, for iPhone 20 or whatever it might be, to have post quantum encryption capabilities, right? Because this device that I rely on pretty heavily, that I mean, it would take such a significant event for me to get off of an Apple device at this point that like it's like, guys, I'm hoping you're preparing like everyone else is saying. And to your point too, with the Biden administration, I think they actually moved up the date to, I think it was 2035, and I think they moved it up to like 2028 or something like that. Like I mean, that's how dire the situation really is, because now everyone, when the government changes the timeline like that, that they probably have some, genius in a basement somewhere that already accomplished it. And they're like, the genie's out of the bottle in this room. We can't keep it in this room for that long. Exactly. It's going to escape at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. But, on behalf of the government's case, to a certain extent, I understand the need of a backdoor from their perspective, because they're also tasked with keeping their citizens safe, right? Whoever the government entity is. I think the challenge comes about when within the government, the checks and balances fail. And guess what? There is abuse and misuse of that information. And that's when it all starts to fall apart. And that's why Apple basically took the position. And Apple always engineered with security in mind. That's the way we have as well, as the first step. And Apple said, listen, it's not my data. I don't have control over it, so I can't give it to you. And in fact, the way we built NetSphere too is similar, where even if law enforcement comes to us saying, hey, listen, we need access to data from XYZ, we don't have access to that data because it does not belong to us. We don't own the keys. Every customer has keys to their own data. And those keys are now obviously quantum proof, because honestly, that data is not ours. We are not in the business of providing data, right? And so that strong position around security has kept Apple in good stead, and Android was forced to follow because people started becoming aware of the importance of that. And I think Android is playing catch up, but since the platform and the operating system was never developed to start with that in mind, they've kind of done some band-aids to get us there. So that's why, iOS, when compared to Android, has a distinct difference. And I totally agree with you that, you know, Apple's and Google and others, I'm sure, are in the process of coming out with a quantum chipset of some sort to augment their A22, chip that they're planning to roll out. I think WWDC was talking about how they've progressed from A1 to I think A18 or something or the other.
Yeah.
And the point being is everybody realizes the importance of data security now. And now with data security, quantum is that much more important. With the government themselves saying, hey, do it now. We're already in 2025. 2028 is in 3 years, guys. So it'll take you some time to get it done. So you should be making those decisions here and now. And that's what people need to understand. You can't have your head in the sand and think this is going to go away. Guess what? This is one thing that is not going away. And this is one thing that is definitely going to impact how you conduct your business. So you might as well take action today.
Yeah, yeah, it's a fascinating time. Can we talk about, like Microsoft recently, maybe a month ago at this point, came out or announced the Willow quantum chip, right? What's the
And Google announced Vicar, I think, different but similar.
right? What's the purpose of these quantum chips? Is it doing a key exchange like a QKD key exchange? Is it like what's going on in that chip? Do you know? Maybe you're not the best person to ask, right? But maybe you may know.
No, no. Again, what I do understand is that this is really a part of progressive R&D for them to get to a point where they can leverage quantum as a computing platform that goes across the board, right? And so it's part of an evolutionary cycle. They may not be real world uses of these chipsets, but I think that they're very, very important proof points to be delivered. And what it also shows is that there is real R&D being done. The private sector here in the US tends to be fairly open in announcing their accomplishments. But I can bet you there are other folks and organizations that are not announcing what they're up to. But if Microsoft, based on their environment and budget, can get to this point, which is on the road to a full quantum computing platform, if you may, there are others who may be at this point or at a different point. So that is something that validates our collective argument that we've been discussing now for some time on this podcast, is that it's real and we are seeing proof points. So you better start taking action for it.
Mm. Yeah, it's fascinating. Where do you see, everything going, right? Moving forward with the Biden administration having that, that bullet point, that item, right? Everyone needs to start moving towards this. Are you seeing the industry or more companies, kind of come up and start focusing more on this problem? Because I'm thinking of companies like D-Wave, right? That apparently or allegedly they have created something that's more consumer centric for quantum computing. I don't know how valid that is. I don't know how many customers they may have, right? But it seems like quantum is becoming more easy to use. It's more accessible than it ever has been before, right? And that's kind of like the evolution with technology. So where do you see all of this going, and how does it, impact your platform moving forward, right? Like, what's the next iterations that you're seeing down the pipeline that you're preparing for?
No, we obviously see that quantum itself is going to really materialize sooner rather than later. And then we've seen three separate categories of organizations who are really investing in quantum and who are moving at different speeds. You have a bunch of startups, and the startup ecosystem here in the United States is very, very rich, based on the fortune that we have in our country of gaining access to venture capital and other entrepreneurship capital that allows ideas to kind of be watered, if you may, and to flourish. So we've got a bunch of very compelling startups who are doing a lot of amazing work in the quantum realm. We have established companies, and Microsoft, you mentioned, Google, IBM as well has recently started pushing and talking about quantum as well, in the context of AI as well. So we have much more established companies who are allocating R&D dollars against it. And then we have, these nation states that are obviously investing a lot of money. We know that, right? I think the Biden administration data point is just one. They obviously have access to some information that got them concerned enough for him to sign, or for the president at that time to sign an executive order saying, "Hey, guess what? I'm going to prepone that date." Right? And it's driven more because now cyber is really weaponized, as I said earlier in the podcast. And when it gets weaponized, the exponential innovation that takes place because of state actors who are now believe that they're dependent on the success of that realm drives innovation that much faster, and to a point where we essentially could lose control of that innovation cycle because it could move so quickly, right? And so we at NetSphere have to constantly be aware of that. And that's why now when we developed the platform, we felt encryption and security had to be number one, right? And so not only have we showed up the platform with quantum proof encryption, we've also made sure that we've developed a surround on the platform that provides best practices for an enterprise to ensure that they are, managing their internal communications in a manner that is in line with what we refer to as quantum proof. The quantum proof happens at the layer of encryption, as I'm sure you know, right? So we want to make sure that our platform delivers a holistic quantum proof experience, not just at the encryption layer, but also at the policy layer, leveraging zero trust as a mechanism as well. So we've built in a whole bunch of features that allow us to do that. And obviously, we are constantly looking at what else do we need to do? What else do we need to do to keep the platform secure? Authentication is a very, very important aspect of access. And so we're constantly kind of raising the bar on that as well. So holistic quantum proof platforms, I think, are more important. And I think that's what we're trying to deliver with NetSphere as well.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point, because it's going to get to the point where the only way that you're, breaking a quantum system, right, is via access, authorization, are you cracking the account? Are you getting access to the MFA token? What does that look like? And so, we're focused on quantum right now, probably because it's an emerging area that we've never seen it expand and grow like this before, right? But at the end of the day, all of the other factors of security, all the other pillars and domains of security are still going to matter. They're still going to definitely play a role in whatever platform is claiming to be, quantum resistant or quantum proof, right? So to speak. So it's fascinating to see how that is even going to change and evolve over time, right? I feel like that area will probably even lag behind a little bit, right? Because, maybe not for your solution because you're already thinking that way, right? But for organizations, just thinking about how different organizations work, they would probably start shifting their focus like they are right now towards quantum, kind of forget about the basics of IAM and network security, right, and just overall, and then they'll have to play catch up, with that in those areas as well. So it'll be fascinating, like there's always a news article every day, right, saying these are the top 5 jobs that are going to be eliminated by AI and whatever else, like within 12 months we're not going to have any developers anymore.
I've seen that.
Within 18 months, we're not going to have any like low level security people anymore. And it's kind of like, yeah, if that were to happen, we would be back in the seat within 6 months, right?
Yeah.
Because the company is no longer going to be functioning. Like,
Yeah.
and that's guaranteed.
Yep. Yeah. No, and you're absolutely right. And I think you hit upon a very important point. Access is really where it all starts, right? And everybody has to remember, as we are working collectively to shore up our systems, the bad actors are also leveraging all the same technologies to see how they can get through to our systems, right? I'll give you a small example. 5, 7 years ago, when you would get a phishing email or even a phishing text, it would be a disjointed message. It was very obvious that it had been written or put together by an entity that didn't understand English as their first language. It had grammatical errors, and you would laugh at it and not do anything about it. Now these phishing attacks are becoming so sophisticated. I recently got a couple of emails which was so amazingly doctored and came through as if they were actually coming from Amazon. And the reason that is happening is because the bad actors are actually leveraging AI to develop these mechanisms, including the messages, right? And regardless of where they're originating, the sophistication is coming through the use of AI, and that is really a great example of how we need to constantly be aware of everything that's going on around us, because the bad actors are also using the same tech to get at us, right? And access is always the weakest link. And again, I keep coming back to NetSphere. Is today phishing, on email, you're slammed with spam constantly because it's an open environment. NetSphere actually keeps it closed and encrypted, and so we don't have spam on platforms such as ours, and so we are able to keep the front door closed. The employees are the weakest link, not because they it's just because these attacks have become so sophisticated that people, when they're doing their job, they see something come through, they don't pay attention to it, they click on the wrong link, and boom, you've compromised your environment. So I think access is very, very important, and knowing the fact that also the bad actors are leveraging some of the same technologies requires us to really constantly reevaluate everything we're doing. But there is no you know argument with regards to not doing the quantum proof. That's real and present danger that you have to react to.
So you know, recently, at my 9 to 5, we had a threat actor that was using AI to fish, my CFO to try and get him to send $20 million to an account and whatnot, right? So, they sent the email and the email was formatted properly. It looked like it was coming from the CEO. It looked perfect, right? There's nothing that would have raised an alarm or anything like that, because especially he's done it before. He's done it for the CEO before for a couple other times. So he was used to this kind of request, but he followed the process that we already set up internally, right? So follow up with a phone call, get on the phone, confirm that it's the CEO. Well, the attacker was using an AI, algorithm, right, that mimicked the CEO's voice, which is, very much out there, right? Like, you do earnings calls once a quarter, right? And the CEO is talking, you're getting their voice pattern and everything like that. So they replicated the CEO's voice. So it sounded exactly like him, came from his, personal cell phone, like you would expect and everything. And the only thing that stopped it right there was the fact that we had like a final layer of security, a final layer of authorization, and they couldn't answer that challenge question, right? Because it's a kind of a off the wall one. It's not related to anyone's background. It's like you either know the answer or you don't, and they definitely didn't. And that
So,
was the only thing that caught him up,
yeah.
right? Like, that was the only thing that stopped that attack from even happening, was that final piece, right? And you have this advanced AI that's mimicking a voice, that's sending
Yep.
off this email that looks perfect, right? All these other things are lining up, except for that one person with the brain between their ears that said, we need one more thing, right? Because I heard about this AI replicating voices over here. If he does that, he'll get past the second layer of authentication, but he probably won't be able to replicate it over here, right? And so it took that person, not an AI, it took that person to say, we need this other thing that saved us, 20 million. Because when it starts at 20 million, and you're like, oh, send me, 60, right? Send me 80, whatever it is, what's to stop it, right? Because now it's matching up in your own brain.
So, Joe, what you just described is essentially that last step that you described was when you requested an encryption key. So that was essentially in your back and forth. That was your encryption key. And so means I have gotten so many requests. My employees have gotten so many requests that, hey, this is Anurag. Do me a favor. Just go out to the Apple store and buy $5,000 worth of Apple gift cards. I need it urgently, and come back and send the numbers to me. Right. And these requests are coming on publicly available messaging platforms and email. And, my people say, they respond simply. They said, you know what? We're happy to do that, Anurag. Just send me a message on NetSphere. And right there, the whole thing breaks down. And that's the power of encryption. And at some point in time, I'd love to demonstrate to you this, how our system generates that key, because it's in the settings you can actually see this key, and I'll show you the difference between pre-quantum and post-quantum keys, making it that much more difficult in the back and forth for anybody to decipher it. And that's the beauty of platforms such as ours. But you created that same platform with your process, right?
Yeah.
And the last step in the process was, hey, give me the key. And the key was a random generated key, which is what we do. And that's what you did too. It was not related to anybody or anything else. And if they weren't able to deliver it, and off you go. Now, the only flaw in your system was that key was stored probably somewhere that somebody could gain access to it. And right. But in encryption and also in a post-quantum world, those keys are generated randomly at that point in time and then reset themselves every 6 seconds, which again makes it that much more difficult for anybody to gain access to. And that's why it's so important for people to get onto these encrypted platforms and ask the question, is it truly encrypted or it's encrypted? And there's available information out there that allow you to kind of get past the initial marketing data to get to the bottom line on how and what encryption a platform's using. We share that very openly with our prospects as well. And that's when they realize that, what they're buying into is a very mature and well-developed platform.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Anurag, we've been going for almost an hour now, and we're unfortunately at the top of our time. But it's been a fantastic conversation. It's been very engaging, very thought provoking and whatnot. And we're kind of shedding light on an area that isn't very well known yet by most people, right? So it's always helpful to kind of go through it and dive in and what's out there, what's providing actual security and what.
No, I really enjoyed our conversation as well. I actually did not realize we were at it for an hour, but yeah, it's an exciting time. It's an exciting realm, a fast-moving realm, if you may, and we're excited about being able to participate in it and contribute to it as well. So I really appreciate you taking the time and having me on the podcast, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before I let you go, how about you tell my audience, where they could find you if they wanted to connect with you, and where they could find your company if they wanted to learn more.
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, so Anurag Lal, Anuraglal, and my company is Netsphere, NETSFERE.com. Come check us out. I think we have a fairly decent description of what we do and how we do it. And if it helps you guys, we'd be happy to work with you guys and deploy our platform within your environment.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone. Go and check out, the links that he just said. It was a fantastic episode. Hope everyone enjoyed it. Cool.